When my father died, my world changed in ways I could never have imagined. I was only 16 at the time, old enough to understand loss but too young to fully carry its weight. My father had been my anchor, gentle yet strong, protective yet encouraging. He believed in me in a way no one else did. The day we buried him, I felt like a part of me was lowered into the ground with him. Life at home shifted almost overnight. My mother, already a strict woman, became even more controlling. She said it was to keep me safe, but it felt more like she was building walls around me, higher and higher, until I could barely breathe. My older brother took on the role of the man of the house, and suddenly he was telling me what I could wear, where I could go, and who I could speak to. I wasn't allowed to meet friends after school anymore. I couldn't go to parties, couldn't walk home alone, and every time I asked for a little freedom, I was met with lectures about how the world works now without my father. In the first few weeks after his death, I tried to be understanding. I told myself they were grieving, just like I was. Maybe their way of dealing with pain was to hold on tighter, to keep control over the things they could. But as the months passed, the rules didn't loosen, they tightened. My phone had to be left on the kitchen counter every night so they could check who I was talking to. If I wanted to buy clothes, my mother or brother had to come with me. I wasn't allowed to join the school art club because it met after hours, and apparently, wandering the streets after school was too dangerous. I started feeling trapped in my own home. The living room that once echoed with my father's laughter now felt like a cold waiting room where I sat, day after day, waiting for my life to begin. The windows looked out onto the world I used to be part of, friends laughing at the park, students walking to the cafe after class, but that world was no longer mine. It wasn't just about rules. It was the way they looked at me now, as if I were fragile glass, or worse, as if I were something that needed to be guarded against the world. They never asked me how I felt. They never asked me what I wanted. Every decision was made for me, and if I dared to question it, I was accused of being selfish or disrespectful. Inside, I felt like I was shrinking. My confidence faded. I stopped raising my hand in class. I avoided starting conversations with friends because I didn't know what to say anymore. How could I explain why I couldn't go to the movies with them, or why I had to go straight home the moment the final school bell rang? At night, lying in bed, I would stare at the ceiling and remember the freedom I used to have. My father used to encourage me to try new things, to take small risks, to meet people and explore life. He'd take me to the library on weekends, or to the lake for picnics, just the two of us. He would have hated seeing me caged like this. The worst part was the loneliness. Even though my family was physically close, I felt emotionally abandoned. I didn't feel understood, I felt managed, like my life had become a project they were controlling. My friends slowly stopped inviting me to things. It wasn't because they didn't care, it was because they knew I wouldn't be able to come. I began keeping a journal, hidden under a loose floorboard in my room. It was the only place I could speak freely. I wrote about missing my father, about feeling suffocated, about longing to run down the street and not stop until I was somewhere entirely new. I wrote about wanting to be seen as capable, not as someone who needed constant guarding. But no matter how much I poured my feelings into those pages, nothing changed in the real world. The rules stayed, the restrictions stayed, and the walls around me grew higher. Sometimes I wondered if they would ever come down, or if this was my life now. The first time my family brought up the idea of marriage, I thought they were joking. I was 18, still trying to figure out who I was, still nursing the quiet rebellion that lived in my heart. But they weren't joking. My mother sat me down at the kitchen table one Sunday afternoon, her voice calm but firm, and told me about a wonderful opportunity that had come our way. The opportunity was a young man named Nathaniel Carter. He was the son of a wealthy businessman in our town. I had seen him a few times at local events, tall, perfectly dressed, with the kind of smile that never quite reached his eyes. He was polite but distant, the kind of person who seemed to speak in rehearsed lines. My mother spoke about him as if he were a gift wrapped in gold paper, a solution to all our problems. She said that Nathaniel's family had influence, money, and connections. That being married to him would mean security, status, and a life free from financial worries. My brother nodded in agreement, adding that love could come later, and that this was a chance I shouldn't waste. I sat there in silence, my stomach churning. Love could come later? I didn't even like Nathaniel. He didn't laugh at the things I laughed at. He didn't ask me questions about myself. He didn't seem to care who I really was. But my protests didn't matter. Every time I said I wasn't ready, my mother reminded me of how hard life had been since my father died. She reminded me of the bills, the pressure, the need for stability. And when I still hesitated, she accused me of being ungrateful for everything she had done to raise me. It was as if saying no wasn't an option. Before I fully understood what was happening, the engagement was announced. My friends were shocked. Some congratulated me politely, but I could see the confusion in their eyes. Others whispered that I was lucky to be marrying someone so rich, as if money alone could guarantee happiness. I smiled for the pictures, wore the ring Nathaniel had picked out without asking my opinion, and nodded through endless conversations about the wedding. The wedding day was beautiful, at least on the surface. The flowers were perfect, the music soft and elegant, the guests well-dressed and smiling. But inside, I felt hollow. I kept looking for a spark in Nathaniel's eyes, some sign that he was happy to be marrying me for more than my family name or my appearance. But there was nothing. He was polite, as always, but detached. Married life was even lonelier than I had imagined. Nathaniel worked long hours at his father's company and spent most evenings out at business dinners. When he was home, he was distant, his mind elsewhere. We didn't talk much, except about practical things, schedules, bills, the occasional social event. He didn't ask about my day, and when I tried to talk about my feelings, he listened with the same polite indifference he showed to everyone. I tried, at first. I cooked his favorite meals, decorated the house to feel warm and inviting, asked him about his work. But the more I tried, the more I felt like I was talking into an empty room. It wasn't just that he didn't love me, he didn't seem to want to know me at all. I could have been anyone, and it wouldn't have mattered. Months passed like this, each day blending into the next. I began to feel invisible. I would walk past him in the hallway and he wouldn't even glance up from his phone. At night, we lay in the same bed but might as well have been miles apart. I remembered my mother saying love could come later, but later never arrived. The breaking point came one evening when we attended a charity gala together. I had spent hours getting ready, choosing a dress I thought he would like, doing my hair just so. But when I walked down the stairs, he didn't even look up. He was too busy checking his watch, muttering about being late. That night, sitting at the table surrounded by strangers, I realized I had never felt more alone. When I finally told Nathaniel I wanted a divorce, he didn't argue. He simply nodded, as if I had just confirmed something he already knew. We signed the papers quietly, without drama. No fights, no tears, just two people who had never truly been together agreeing to part. Leaving him was both terrifying and liberating. For the first time in years, I could breathe again. I didn't have to pretend anymore. I could make my own choices, go where I wanted, talk to whoever I pleased. It wasn't easy, there were whispers, gossip, and my family's disappointment to deal with, but I knew deep down I had made the right choice. And as I stood in my small apartment on the first night after the divorce, surrounded by boxes and uncertainty, I realized something important. I would rather face the unknown alone than live in a gilded cage with someone who didn't see me.